On this episode of Sega Talk, we discuss all things Gunvalkyrie, the underrated Xbox exclusive by Jet Set Radio developer SMILEbit. We talk about the development, we take a look at the unreleased Dreamcast port. All this and more on this episode of Sega Talk.
SEGAbits presents Sega Talk, a podcast talking all things Sega with your hosts, George and Barry.
Look, it's a giant talking egg. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the master here. So what?
Hello and welcome to Sega Talk. I'm your host George, and with me is Barry.
Hello, welcome to the year 2022.
Our spiritual leader, Barry. I like your robe, dude. It's very slick. It's a special episode. It's the first one of the year. A week late because I was sick, but we're still here. We're still doing it. This is actually the first time we took a break from this show. We've been doing it 2 weeks.
We deserve it.
So yeah, I got COVID, so I wanted to do it. I thought it would have been interesting if I couldn't talk and I'd just be like, ugh. And I just felt like I had a fever. I could have probably gotten through with it, but
right.
It's probably good to take a break. And this is our 87th.
We should take more breaks. We should take breaks when we're not sick. That'd be nice.
This is our 87th episode, right? And we've covered the original Jet. Well, this is a SMILEbit game, and we've covered like other SMILEbit games, obviously the ones that everyone has in the back of their mind when they think about them, Jet Set Radio and Jet Set Radio Future. But this one is kind of an underground game. No one really talks about this game. It feels like it's really, really been under the radar. Like, I know a lot of people say that about like Panzer Dragoon, but I think this one is way more under the radar than those because I've never heard anyone talk about this game, and there's a lot of aspects of this game that a lot of people don't know and don't talk about, like in history videos or anything like that, so it's going to be interesting. You want to talk about our Patreon before we get into the episode?
Absolutely. So this is a Patreon pick, actually. So that means that if you support us at Patreon, at the Sega Saturn tier, you get to dictate what we talk about on this show. And we've got, I'd say, like a sizable amount of people now at that tier to the point where this show is basically all Patreon picks. At least all the way up to, I think, like March or April.
Oh, yeah.
There are a few. I did put in 2 like blank spots where we could pick our own because I definitely want to get back into talking about the Archie Sonic comics. We have a Ken Penders episode coming up, which I think is going to be a blast. But yeah, you pick what we cover. There's other tiers. The base tier is just $1. It's just kind of like I'm here to help you guys out, but it also gets you the audio podcast a week early. And then if you move up from there, there's more incentives like getting the video podcast a week early, picking episodes, jumping on our other shows. We have Sega Newsbits live, and we also have Swing and Report Show live. I've really enjoyed doing the Sega Newsbits live. I don't know if you've watched any of those, but they're just kind of like impromptu morning. Let's look at the SEGAbits website and see what news is there and talk about it a little bit more. It's I don't know. I enjoy it. It's fun to see people come onto the chat and just like talk to me and be like throwing questions at me.
Anybody?
I see. No, everyone's really nice, but I see the appeal now of like YouTubers and like streamers who do it daily, because I'm like, if I had the time and like the energy, I wouldn't mind doing this daily, just there's not enough content.
Exactly.
Like if it's just Sega.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm very, very excited for this episode, as I'm sure we'll learn soon enough. So yeah, let's kick it off. But yeah, SEGAbits at Patreon, it's the only way to support us.
And well, there's other ways. I mean, if you want to leave a thumbs up on the video for free, or do a review on our iTunes or Spotify, we obviously appreciate that too. But so Barry, I know you're a pretty big fan of this game. You actually have a look back article on the SEGAbits website, and it's actually one of the highest ranking articles for this game when you Google it. The article came back in 2015. So looking back now that it's 2022, have your thoughts on Gunvalkyrie changed? And you could tell everyone what your thoughts were in that article.
Yeah, well, in that article, I mean, I'm just a big SmileBit fan. I love Jet Set Radio Future. I'm just a huge fan of the developer and the games they make. And Gunvalkyrie's always been one that people don't really talk about. Like, as you mentioned, there's Jet Set Radio Future and Orta. But Gunvalkyrie's kind of like that third Xbox game that they released that just kind of came and went. It's a very interesting game, though. I think if you're a fan of Jet Set Radio and Panzer Dragoon, it's kind of a melding of those two styles and gameplay styles a little bit. The whole steampunk aesthetic is just it's cool, but it's almost kind of like, what if there was a steampunk Jet Set Radio with Gunvalkyrie Panzer Dragoon like aesthetics. You did mention it's an obscure game. I could go more obscure. There's some baseball games from SmileBit, and there's 100 Swords. You remember that game?
Yeah. That's even more obscure.
That's even more obscure. But as far as like games that are readily available, this one no one really talks about, to the point where I'm like, oh, I'll make an article. Oh, there aren't any other articles on the internet about this game? Okay, I'll talk about it. But yeah, I feel like it's a flawed game, as we'll get into, but I think now that it's available on the Xbox Series and One consoles, I think more people are discovering it, and I think thanks to adaptive controls, it's kind of fixes the game again, as we'll get into. So yeah, it's not a game I love, but it's a game I like talking about in relation to the other SmileBit games.
I think there's like a lot of these games where they're like, you like a lot of aspects of these games, and you like, but there's some spots where you're like, oh, they could have done this better. I wish they did this, and this better. But like, there's just something in there, like in its DNA, that's like attractive. You know, like you said, the Panzer Dragoon kind of aesthetics with the electric punk fusing. It's hard to not like that. You know what I mean? But like, I agree.
And if you were
go on.
Right, well, if you were like a Sonic fan, this would be Burning Rangers, where it's like, it's not a perfect game, but it's really interesting and fun to like look at the development of and talk about. You know, it's kind of like the Burning Rangers of SmileBit games, pretty much.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And the thing I liked about this game is what you said, the art style. I think the problem with this game, we'll get into development and we'll talk about more later, but it just kind of like was cemented between two other bigger games that were already had an established fan base. If they released this maybe in like 2003 or 2004 and like added more things to it, maybe it could have been a bigger hit. You could tell that they were really running like, this is the B team, you know, like there's always a Yakuza game. It's like the goodest, the best one. And then the ones they release like Fist of the North Star, where you're like, oh, I mean, they're all right, but they're glitchy. Obviously, they don't stand next to Yakuza 6, and that's kind of this game for them. So, yeah, and I think that's why it's been, you know, overshadowed. But let's talk about the development. Gunvalkyrie was one of the early third-party titles by Sega, and like most games released in the 2002 era, which is 20 years ago.
Wow.
A lot of these games were first planned for the Dreamcast. Gunvalkyrie was no different. While we don't have that much info, I think we have a lot more info than I put in here. But I do know that the difference was they talk about, at least in the magazine that was leaked early. There was like a magazine in Europe that announced it for Dreamcast, and they had screenshots, which we'll look at right now in a little bit. But first, it was supposed to be more cell shaded. The character of all the characters were supposed to be more cell shaded. They said. I've seen the screenshots. I'll put them on the screen now, so I'll just flip through them while we're talking about it. But in my opinion, it looks a lot like the Xbox version. It like obviously it's not. We don't know about the level design, if it was as expansive. That's something they talked about changing when they came to Xbox, is making levels bigger. But graphically, the tone and everything is almost exactly the same. I really don't actually, like, people say that this is cel-shaded, the characters, the model but it's like semi-cel-shaded. It's like lower quality than the Xbox. Outside of that, though, I actually would really love to play a demo of this to see how it actually ran on the Dreamcast. One of the selling factors of this game, or not selling factors, was supposed to be that it was supposed to have a light gun and controller scheme where you moved with a controller aimed with a light gun instead of having dual shock analog controllers.
Interesting.
So, you think that this light gun... we kind of talked a little bit about the light gun controller idea when we talked about our Dreamcast controllers episode, when we looked at all the Dreamcast controllers, including the light gun. But do you think this scheme, this unique control scheme would have worked? Or you think it would have been one of those games where, like, oh, that was a really crazy idea Sega did, but nobody bought it?
I think if it was optional, it would have been a really cool idea. You have to look at other Dreamcast games coming, or other Sega games coming out to the Xbox, and they had House of the Dead 3, which was one of the few games to utilize the light gun. So why not, add the optional support? I think it's interesting, too, like you mentioned, that this game initially was going to be cel-shaded. Obviously, Jet Set Radio comes to mind, but also House of the Dead 3 was going to be cel-shaded. Mm-hmm. And it was almost like Sega was just like, make every single Xbox game cel-shaded. It worked for Jet Set Radio. It's going to work for Jet Set Radio Future, Gunvalkyrie, House of the Dead 3. It also kind of reminds me of Snatcher, that had optional light gun support for like one or two mini games. I always appreciate when games utilize accessories like that, but it's not like necessary. But yeah, I mean, it all depends on how it was implemented. I would have liked to see this cel shaded, though. I think it probably would have helped the game. I think more people would be like, oh, it's like what's that one? Ollie King.
Yeah.
The arcade game Ollie King. It's not that great a game. It's okay.
It has cool graphics.
I think because it has Jet Set Radio-like graphics, people remember it more. And I think if this game was a little more Jet Set Radio in terms of aesthetics, it probably would have done a little bit better. But that's not to say that Jet Set Radio or Jet Set Radio Future were good sellers. So,
I mean,
I don't know. Would you rather have a bomb or like?
From what I read on here, they said Jet Set Radio. Well, I mean, Sega back then, they always said like, "Oh, this game did good." They did say Jet Set Radio Future did good, but like I don't know what that means with Sega, because like they would lie back then. Like so many games supposedly did well. They definitely didn't say Gunvalkyrie did well, so we know for sure that game did not do well. But I will say I would agree with you. I think it would have been interesting to have more light gun support, but Sega, like at the time, like we talked about, they didn't release the light gun in North America, so it's like they made all these mistakes, and then in Japan they were developing some games to use the light gun the way that Samba de Amigo kind of used the pad. So isn't that that would be kind of weird? They don't even sell it themselves. So there is some gameplay footage. There's like a beta trailer we could click on. Wow, did you hear that? I should lower that down a little bit. But yeah, there's a beta trailer. Have you seen this before? You posted, I think, this on your article, but yeah. I've seen this one, but not the other one, but let's watch this one, and then we'll talk. That's a cool logo. Mm-hmm. They always play this type of music, right? Like techno, electro techno in these like trailers. Remember the Shadow the Hedgehog or the Sonic the Hedgehog Adventure 2?
I was just about to say that, yeah.
Same vibes. Wow. Dude, like this has to be like one of the better looking Dreamcast games if it did come out, right? Like,
right, absolutely.
Like even the flying is ridiculous. Like it looks a lot better than Phantasy Star Online, for example,
Oh, absolutely. Kind of a shame.
Yeah.
I mean, this game never did great on Xbox, so why not just have it be one of the last Dreamcast games and also not do great?
It would have been nice to have it like a Dreamcast like demo. I know it never got that far. I wonder how far in development it was really, but I don't think we're ever gonna like find out. So I don't think Sega. I even looked it up. I was like, I wanted to know if anybody asked for more about it, and Sega PR just like shut down the conversations from the IGN, like those old articles. They were like, "Oh, we never announced it for Dreamcast, Sega of America at E3." They're like, "We announced it for Xbox," and it's like, so they're just pretending that they didn't announce it on Dreamcast and there wasn't footage showing. Like they wouldn't even discuss it. That's the thing. It's like, this is a 30-second one. All right, I'll play it real quick. I haven't seen this one, so better music. This is a Japan one. Wow.
Super long arms.
Yeah, I know. I gotta admit, though, the technology in this game is something. Like, the gun, the way it moves.
It, like, poops off the bottom.
Like, compare this to that Vector Man game they showed back then.
Yeah.
It's like a really... like that was basically a tech demo, but...
It looks good, though. I mean...
It does look good. I would have been very, very into this game. I think they had a hype going on, you know? Like, them as a studio, they had Jet Set Radio, and everyone was always waiting for what they were going to do next, and it was this. It's like...
Right.
I could see the hype just by that. I mean, I think the game is, like you said, it's flawed, but just looking at it like that, that's really nice looking Dreamcast game. So... As you can see here via the screenshots and release footage, this was set to be one of the most advanced, graphically advanced Dreamcast games. While it's true that the Xbox and GameCube were more powerful than the Dreamcast, do you think the Dreamcast still had plenty of juice left? Because like I read a lot of articles about this, and like Yu Suzuki was like pulling out like weird ass stats. I remember like when Shenmue 2 came out, and he's like, Shenmue 2 is 50% of the Dreamcast power, and you're like thinking to yourself, how can you be 50% when this game lags? Like, it lags so bad in some areas they can't even handle it, and they're like 50%. It's like, wow, okay. What do you think?
No, I think they definitely could have gotten a lot out of the Dreamcast. We know just by looking at the very first games and the last games that we saw that there was a huge jump. And we never really got to see developers continue to see how much they could get out of the console. I mean, nowadays we're seeing people do some amazing things on the Genesis and Sega CD, so it wouldn't shock me that, you know, if the Dreamcast was around for another year or two, we would have seen some truly awesome games. I think with Shenmue, the problem was, or Shenmue 2, just the amount of characters on screen was slowing it down. I think with this game, though, because there is only one character and then like very simplistic enemies, it probably would have looked really cool. You know, like I think it would have ran really well. I'm also reminded of Virtual On. I think those games looked super awesome, but they were super simplistic. Like just the frame rate and I don't know, like sometimes it seems like if you have high quality textures, simplistic like polygon models, and keep it to like a main character and some enemies, the games run amazingly well. I think it's just the Dreamcast probably suffers when Yu Suzuki's trying to make like an epic out of it with like 30 characters on screen at once, you know?
Yeah, the weak point of the Dreamcast was its video RAM, so the more simplistic the games were, but like, man, I'll go to my grave, like, the image quality of the Dreamcast is like superior to like the PS2. I love the PS2. I love the games on it, but like when I plug it in,
right,
it has this weird texture, and I'm like, go back to Dreamcast, crystal clear.
The Dreamcast, the later stages in Sonic Adventure 2, like when you're in like the space colonies, those textures are insane. They're so sharp. Like, I know it's just a flat surface with an image, but you look at it, and I remember just looking at on my tube TV at home in like 2001. I was like, holy shit, look what the... Like, I can see every little nut and rivet and bolt.
Yeah.
That's really what the Dreamcast excelled at. It was amazing.
I think most... Like, when I started looking back at like trying to get the best picture out of my like old consoles, they're like, you have a Sega console, don't worry about it. Everything's already basically built in. You just have to buy the cable, and it's like, all right. But then like TurboGrafx and all these other consoles, you have to like modify it, and it's like, oh, I'm good. I'm glad that Sega did that at least, right? But
right.
So obviously, Gunvalkyrie never graced the Dreamcast. The game moved development to Xbox, but it wasn't the only Sega game to make the move to the Microsoft's Xbox. Like we talked about in the previous Xbox exclusive episode of Sega would go on to announce 11 games exclusively to contract with Microsoft. They announced it in Los Angeles on May 16, 2001. Microsoft would go out and put out a press release giving Xbox users a sneak peek of upcoming Sega and Capcom games. This is when they were trying to appeal to more Japanese gamers. While Capcom promised titles was they only promised 2 titles, right? Sega got 11. They got 11 out of Sega. They only got 2 out of Capcom, and those happened to be Dino Crisis 3 and an unnamed title at the time called Brainbox, which is actually Steel Battalion, which I think both of them have really lowly rated. I'm going to be honest with you. I liked the first Dino Crisis game. I never played the second one. I didn't even know a third one existed. So the fact that I'm when I saw this, I was like, wait, I didn't know that. Sega's was a little more robust. Obviously, they said that the next entries of Crazy Taxi and House of the Dead were going to be exclusive on Xbox, and they even promised that future games will take advantage of the broadband Ethernet connection. Obviously, Gunvalkyrie and a lot of Sega released in-house Japanese games did not really take advantage of the online features of Xbox Live. Do you think this is something that some of the developers should have emphasized more, especially coming from the Dreamcast?
It would have been nice. I think there was a promise, or at least an expectation, that Jet Set Radio Future would have online play. Same with Crazy Taxi 3. And we just never got it. So it's unfortunate that the company that was really the leader in online video game play did not follow up that reputation with future consoles. I don't know if that's... I don't know if the blame is laid at Microsoft or Sega or what, but I would have absolutely loved Jet Set Radio Future. I imagine a light gun shooter with online gameplay. That would have been cool.
Yeah, you could just go online and it'll be a lobby and you just get on an arcade and it's somebody's virtual avatar gets on too and you guys could play.
Would have been cool.
Yeah. It's funny though because Sega was so crazy about doing broadband on the GameCube that they were the only supporter of the online GameCube stuff, but they kind of didn't even really take advantage of Xbox. It's kind of weird. It's almost like they were 1 foot in, 1 foot out, kind of, with Xbox.
Right.
Looking back at interviews, I wondered why SmileBit, a company most known for Jet Set Radio at the time in the West, selected the Xbox to make exclusives. And then I found this quote with the assistant president of SmileBit, Takayuki Kawayago. And he said, I got this from your article, actually. The first reason to develop this title on Xbox was the fact that Gunvalkyrie was originally developed for Dreamcast adopting WinCE, which made the whole switching process easier. It was also because SmileBit has been developing PC software. Therefore, we are very familiar with DirectX, and because Microsoft was the very first to approach us among the platform holders, which... I believe it because Peter Moore was talking to Microsoft and waiting to jump ship, so definitely was one of the guys that gave him early access to developers at Sega. Well, at this point in history, no one really knew the core market audience for the Xbox. I think we always kind of knew that PC gamers were going to be the big focus for Microsoft, though. But they wanted to they were trying to do a broad reach, sort of the way Sega used to do it. And especially was trying to make Dreamcast buyers jump ship. I think I remember this era for sure. But overall, do you think Sega made the right choice in sticking SmileBit with Xbox over, let's say, PlayStation 2 or GameCube?
Yeah, I'd say it's the right choice. I think early on, the Xbox, before it became the Halo sports gamer, PC gamer machine that it kind of is now, they were really trying to push it as The Matrix was big at the time. And it really was kind of like Westerner video game console that appealed to people who were aware of anime and like Japanese games, but they liked it when it was like an American twist on it. So stuff like Panzer Dragoon Orta, Gunvalkyrie, Jet Set Radio Future, it just kind of made sense on the Xbox outside of the power that the Xbox provided. I don't know. For me, it always felt like GameCube was the Nintendo console. You know what you're getting with that. PS2 was like Square Enix, fighting games, like super Japanese kind of games. And then the Xbox, I mean, what was it? Well, it was kind of like the home to a lot of Sega franchises were at the time that were Japanese developed, but very much appealed to Westerners. So for me, it just made sense to have like Crazy Taxi and House of the Dead and Jet Set Radio on that console, because it just, I mean, it was a powerhouse sort of console, so it really, I couldn't imagine those games running on any other console, and I don't think they could. But outside of that, just you remember those early ads with like the green X, and like you'd see the characters that like Blinks the Time Sweeper, you know, like, or they
like when you said the Matrix, the first thing I thought about was the menu for it, like the opening is like green and black, just like the Matrix, you know, with like the shade they have, the filter. So right when you said it, the first thing I thought was that X coming in with the Xbox. I'm like, super Matrix, the influence for sure.
Right. So I feel like they hoped that they were going to start to appeal to these like gamers who were kind of like anime curious, Japanese curious, but they still really preferred their like Western developed games. And so to have stuff like Gunvalkyrie on it just made sense. Like I think it fits the look of the early Xbox.
Do you also remember
so it works for me.
All the magazine covers they used to do where it was like Panzer Dragoon Xbox, and it was almost like they were tempting like Dreamcast gamers like months after the death of the Dreamcast, like, check it out, a new console, and we have this game that you wanted, right? And then it's like the new Jet Set Radio. I remember that one being on covers, and I was like, I want an Xbox.
That is probably the most exciting like teaser trailers of all time for me, is the Jet Set Radio Future one, because it didn't show much. It just showed the Shibuya terminal, but it was huge. It was so big, and they had multiple characters at the same time. I mean, at the time, it kind of felt like false advertising now, because you're like, oh, 3 or 4 characters? This is going to be a multiplayer Jet Set Radio game. Wow. But still, yeah. So, I mean, if that's what they hooked me with, then to see stuff like Gunvalkyrie would be like, oh, wow, SmileBit's on a roll.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They were on a roll. This is like, I think, when they made Jet Set Radio, it was just Jet Set Radio and a bunch of Japanese stuff. This one, it was like 3 games coming out worldwide in the same year. It was like, it's pretty, makes the Yakuza team look a little sloppy, a little slow. But I mean, that's all they did. It was kind of like the grand finale, sadly. But sadly, while the Xbox and even PS2 got exclusive SmileBit games, PS2 just got basically those soccer games we talked about, the sports games, the horse ones. The only console that did not get an exclusive was GameCube, which the producer Takayuki, who we talked about before, touched on this in the 2002 interview. He says, "We plan to support the GameCube, but at the moment we're still researching the hardware and trying to decide the best software to develop for it." Sadly, this would not come to pass. The only game released by SmileBit was a horse racing port of a PS2 game, which was only co-developed by the studio. So they never got one full game from them, sadly. I would say that I think it's kind of a miss from Sega, because GameCube at the time was actually kind of dripping. I wouldn't say dripping because it's just an art style. It's kind of like saying doing a claymation game is like ripping off another game that did claymation before it, but GameCube did feature cel-shaded graphics on some of their big titles, like Zelda, The Wind Waker. Do you think SmileBit could have done like a port of the original Jet Set Radio, kind of like a Redux version or something to like try to scam some money off of the GameCube fans?
I was just about to say that. Yeah, I think that probably would have been their best bet, is to do a port of the original Jet Set Radio. And probably like also port it to Xbox, like an Xbox GameCube release of the original game. I think too. I'm trying to think. There's another game, Skies of Arcadia too. I mean, that did really well on GameCube. So I think it would have been smart to do something like that, but I also think SmileBit kind of was like on the way out by that point, so it would have been really hard for them to be like, oh, that cel-shaded Zelda game's going really well, but we're also like closing our doors or being absorbed by Sonic Team.
Yeah. Have you played a Wind Waker?
Yeah, I have. It's good.
It has its flaws. It's pretty. Yeah, it's a pretty game. The cel-shaded look of it is like very unique compared. You know what I mean? Like you can't really compare it to Jet Set Radio in its art style. Like they did everything a little different. That one's more flatter. Blue. Even this coloring is all different. It's weird. I have the
Wind Waker Wii U. Oh, that's what I have.
Nice.
The Wii U console.
Those games get rare. Yeah. They always go up in value for some reason. I mean,
Well, the Wind Waker console has not dropped in price. It's the same price as it was at retail, like $400.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, and it's a digital game. There's no copy of the game with it.
Oh God.
So.
Let's talk about the story. I actually really like the background of the story, and I kind of broke it down to 2 bits of the story. So, story-wise, Gunvalkyrie is a game that takes place in an alternative history of 1906, where the British Empire rules all of the Earth and several extrasolar colonies with the technology brought by Halley's Comet in 1835. It's called Halley's Core, an unknown substance found around the world grants anyone that comes in contact with it superhuman abilities and become known as Halley's Chosen. The first of Halley's Chosen was a scientist named Dr. Hubblegate, who was affected by the comet while he was in his mother's womb and granted the superhuman mind that would create a wide range of scientific breakthroughs, including fusion and nuclear power, genetic engineering, computers, space travel, and more. Gates' discovery is what actually led the British Empire to conquer the world. Damn it. Everything has a U now, so now everyone has the same version of Sonic Colors.
That's good.
Gates also holds great political power over the economy, politics, and military affair. It is also the founder of the Hubble Foundation that does the Gunvalkyrie organization. It's basically a superhero team made up of Halley's Chosen throughout the world to stop and prevent misuse of technology. But one day, Dr. Hubblegate disappears, and 4 years later, we start the story of the game. Quite a bit of a backstory, a backdrop of the story. What is your opinion of the backstory of this game? And it's like, do you think this game has enough to... it's very superhero theme. It almost feels like it's a Marvel superhero story where it's like a comet came and everyone turned to superheroes, and now there's a force of superheroes.
I really love the story,
and I like alternative history. So it also reminds me of like Valkyrie Chronicles, right? Like that's also an alternative history. So, what's your thoughts on the story?
Right. I mean, we've done over 80 of these shows now, and sometimes we'll read the stories, and either they're too simplistic or they're overly complex, and you're just like, "What the hell did I just read?" What I really like about this one, though, is like you can basically sum it up by saying, "What if Halley's Comet crashed to Earth and brought a superhero mineral that altered the history of the world and made Britain a superpower and accelerated technology in the 1800s?" Like, that sounds awesome.
Kind of sounds like a book. You know what I mean? Like,
well, it kind of reminds me of like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Remember that? You know, or something like that, where it's just kind of like I'm not too into steampunk, but it gives me that kind of vibe. It also reminds me a little bit of Valkyria Chronicles, which is a little bit of an alternative history. So yeah, I definitely think this is. It also kind of has a House of the Dead vibe to it, where there's this like mysterious doctor who goes missing, and then bad things happen. So it is really like a steampunk House of the Dead sort of plot, which I dig. I like that.
When you said it in your like article, when I was reading research, and you said this game is like visually a mishmash of these games. You know, you said Panzer Dragoon and Jet Set Radio ideas. I thought that like the background story was also kind of felt like a mishmash of other stuff that they'd done before. Like we'll go on to it later, but we'll actually talk about it right now. It's right here. But
well, I was just gonna say, even coming from SmileBit, you look at the stories that they did in their own original games, like Jet Set Radio, where on its surface you're just like, oh yeah, Jet Set Radio is this game you fight the Yakuza and cops. But like when you actually look at the story of Jet Set Radio, there's a lot of like lore there that is touched on but not like super delved into, like where there's a whole like evil record that has like a connection, and then like the cops are owned by like the Yakuza, and then the Yakuza has like an evil assassin organization. So it definitely fits with what SmileBit was doing at the time. I think in this game, though, they actually lay it out a lot better.
So when the Doctor disappeared, so did the residents of a colonized planet called Tí Nog, which is an Irish mythology term, which means land of the young. So they like take Irish mythology here. It's kind of like how Panzer Dragoon took like Latin and German and did their own language kind of idea. And had an outbreak of large alien creatures that look like insects in their place. And unsurprisingly, before Gates' disappearance, he also was doing research on strengthening colonists via genetic modification. In response, members of the Gunvalkyrie military organization known as Team Dolphin are sent in to investigate the disappearance of Gates and try to see what's up with that planet. As you can see, one of the big aspects of the game is fighting insects, which in my opinion, kind of goes all like, you see this whole cool story about like Earth and like superheroes, and like you're like, what's that? And they're like, all right, go to this planet and fight insects the whole game. And you're like, oh, come on, man, don't give me all this cool stuff and we can't even explore it. But it is what it is. It's like I feel like that like they did all the enemies and insects, and then they told SmileBit, oh, that's a cool story, but now you have to put insects in it because we did all the enemies. And they're like, oh, fuck. All right. But which always gave me it always gave me Starship Trooper vibes. That's another one. What other pieces of media does Gunvalkyrie's story remind you of, and ideas?
Oh, easy. Phantasy Star Online. Like that game, it kicks off with the Pioneer 1 going off to find a planet. There's a mysterious accident, and when you show up, there's all these mutants in the Pioneer 2. Like you're the next ship to go explore, and this is like straight up Phantasy Star Online's plot at this point.
Oh yeah.
Where you're like, what happened to the colony? Why are these aliens here? And I mean, maybe we'll get into it, but this Dr. Hebelgate, he's kind of like the Red Ring Rico of this game.
I didn't put the ending or anything, but I do know that like it's very open ended. There is no real ending about his fate. It's like, isn't it left to, like for you to ponder kind of a thing? Yeah. Okay, I didn't really want to. I didn't really go too much into it, but just wanted to know if that was right. While Gunvalkyrie, let's look at some of the characters. And this is funny because I couldn't find art for any of the characters at all. Only 2 characters. So while the game is trying to like do this like sci-fi big world with conquered planets and has really big ideas, the cast is like super small and tiny. The game in scale is actually really small and tiny. It's like you're seeing it's kind of like Alien. You know, there's a big world out there where all this stuff is happening, but you're in a ship with a few people, and that's about it. You're a little slice of this world. While Gunvalkyrie was based on alternative history, where so let's talk about some of the characters. First is Dr. Hubble Gates, which we talked about already, so we don't have to go through them. Lieutenant Meridian Poe. Poe is the daughter of Gates, and is the head of the mission bestowed upon us as players. Poe survives on life support system that was developed by her father, and they surgically removed her head and had her body disposed of, not showing on screen. Was she showing?
You see this head.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, I guess they just don't show the whole part of her head getting chopped off.
They should have though. Kelly O'Linmy, is that her last name is saying?
Kelly O'Linmy.
Kelly is really the star of the show. Every promotional material has her. Even though there are 2 playable characters in this game, I don't think anyone that would know that. Like if you tell someone like hey, this game, who's the main character? They would just say, oh, it's that girl, the blonde girl. Because, like, every game, every promotional material had her. She was born in Ballymun, Ireland.
Ballymun?
And she aided the Irish Republic in their fight for independence until she kind of disagreed with their methods, and then she joined the Gunvalkyrie. So some of the characters have, like, background story and the idea that there was, like, an Irish rebellion. That, like, history still happened, but in here it happened a little different. They show him out of armor and in armor. I thought that was cool. Yeah, they had designs for both. Very, like, kind of like Metroid, kind of how they have one. Okay, I'm going to screw this guy's name up. So, Saborota Mishima? Is that how you say it? Mishima was born in Kyushu, Japan, and was an exiled samurai for the Meiji Restoration who was saved by Gunvalkyrie after he was unjustly sentenced to death. That's kind of his story. Not much. I would say that if you're gonna play this game first time, play the chick Kelly because she's faster, and this guy's slow.
Yeah.
And he's hard to play. Like, if you're not an expert in this game, like, this game's already hard. I'm gonna be honest with you. This game picks up difficulty quick, and you definitely want every advantage you could get. So definitely not him. He's not. And let's be honest, his character design is very, like, generic. Like, something about Kelly, I don't know. Like, I usually don't pick girls in games, but I always pick her. I don't know why. I really like her suit, the white suit. Very cool.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you can see, you really only have two characters. Okay, yeah. What do you think about the background on each character? Like, the fact that they're trying to do this whole idea that there's still samurais and this guy was, like, trying to be executed. Do you think that was like it's just kind of like throwaway lines, it feels like, in a biography, kind of like when you play a fighting game and they're like, Ryu almost killed Sagat, and you're like, oh, okay, when? I wasn't there, what?
Well, I like the idea of these characters. I like how they're not British, even though, like, the whole British Empire becoming, like, the dominant superpower is the plot of the game. Yeah. It almost does feel unfinished, though. I feel like there's two more characters that could have been in this game. I'm actually kind of surprised there isn't a third character, at least, who's, like, a big black guy, because they seem to always do that
when they want to be
in Sega games.
Yeah, like when they want to be diverse, they're like, oh, well, that...
Right, it would be like, here's Brent Goodman. He's from America. He was a baseball player until he joined the Gunvalkyrie.
Or, like...
You know, you'd be like, hey, what's up, everybody? Let's go play some baseball.
a Marine-looking American guy.
Right, exactly. But, you know, it kind of reminds me of... I mean, of course, we're talking about, like, binary domain. Mm-hmm. Kind of reminds me of that, too.
Yeah.
Where it's like... I think they could have pushed it a little more. I think if they added more characters, it would have been cool to have, like, characters from different parts of the world who all fell under the British Empire, but they had ties to their home countries. And who knows? They probably did plan that, but at a certain point, they're like, we need a guy and a girl, and that's it. That's all you get.
It's also the Empire in Panzer Dragoon. I feel like SmileBit and the people that worked at Team Andromeda, they just hated the British Empire and its colonization. Like, they're like, oh yeah, the Empire in Panzer Dragoon is really the British Empire, and then this one is literally just the British Empire. So yeah,
right.
Controls in this game are probably what holds a lot of people back from playing it. Like we stated in our development, obviously there is no light gun feature in this game. Sadly, it would have been a cool extra to have, but so what they did, basically, SmileBit decided to take advantage of the Xbox controller that they had. Like, now you could actually click down on both joysticks, and they do different things. Like, the left one, you do the boost, right, when you click it, and then the other one, the right one, you do a quick turn, kind of like Resident Evil used to have. The game also has a left trigger, allowing you to do rocket boost and hovering, while the right trigger fires the weapon. And the front-facing buttons are basically mostly used to switch weapons. I think a lot of the issues with the game and its player base, especially those going back to play it, is that the controllers might be kind of complex. I don't know, like, it's weird. Like, to me, I mean, to me, the issue was always the difficulty spike that happens between the game, where you have to be like more pinpoint accurate. Also, the fact that there's like a combo system where it like makes you take a lot more damage if you do certain. I forgot what it's called. It's like a certain combo where it's like dash combo or something, where if you get to a 20x, you do so much more damage. It's basically almost ridiculousness. So like it's almost like Knights in a way, where you're like, oh, I didn't know about that system. Like I didn't know how that worked. It's like okay,
exactly, yeah.
Do you think the complaints of the controls are justified? Especially consider. I mean, I would say that like a lot of people also have to remember that this is 4 years before Gears of War came out, so like there was no like layout to what people expected from third-person shooters. I feel like people sometimes come from like now knowing that almost every single third-person game copies Gears of War, and then they come in and go, what the hell was Sega doing back then? It's like, well, there was no layout for this, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah, what do you think? Do you think it's...
I think when you start the game up, you're in a very big open area that you have a lot of time to play with the controls and figure it out. So, I mean, there's a lot of games out there where they just drop you into the action. You never get a chance to really just like play around and figure the game out. So I don't think you can give the game any like negatives on that. But the problem is that holding down the thumbstick while using it is very annoying, and it hurts your thumb after a while. And when it's not like an optional action, it's a necessary action, it makes it a very frustrating game to play for a long period of time. You know, like I've recently been playing the do I have it here, the Ghostbusters video game remastered, and it kind of reminds me of Gunvalkyrie in a sense, just because you are doing, you have so many like contraptions on you, and you're utilizing all the different buttons. So you're like, okay, I'm shooting. Okay, now I got to vent. Okay, now I got to throw this thing, put this goggle on. The difference is, I think Ghostbusters does a good job of managing that. It's not like, oh, when you want to fire the proton stream, aim at the ghost and then hold down the button, and keep it held down while you're maneuvering. Like, it's just, that's really hard to do for a long period of time. And up until the recent, I guess, port to or re-release to
backwards compatible
modern Xbox consoles, we have not been able to fix that. So I don't blame people for like judging this game, just because even if you try to get into it, it's hard. Not just difficulty wise, but control wise.
Yeah, it's like they found out like, oh wait, they have a click down joystick button on this controller, and they like had to take advantage of it. And I was thinking,
right,
the only consoles that had it back then was PS2 and Xbox, the click down. I don't think the GameCube was not click down. So
no, I don't think so. And that's L3 and R3, right?
Yeah,
that's what they call them.
That's what they call them.
Yeah,
that confused me when I first got a PlayStation. I was like, what is R3 and how do I do it? When you were playing games to run, they did the clicking down. It was confusing.
Or the white and black buttons.
Oh,
like what were those? They weren't anything. They didn't have names.
No, it was just white and black. And I think on this one it shows you the map, I think, or something like that. I always forget they exist, to be honest with you.
Right. Yeah.
Outside of that, I would say that people like this is an early third-person shooting game. I think just that aspect of it, the game is pretty well done. And I would say the same thing. I wish you could remap buttons. I think it would like back then, like if they just allowed you to remap them, it probably would have been a lot easier on everyone instead of them forcing you. I hate when a game doesn't let you remap buttons. It's like, I know better than you do. Like, I know what I like.
But we can talk about remapping at this point, right?
Yeah,
we don't touch on it later.
I do just a little bit about it, but not too much.
Oh yeah, well, as I mentioned, when this game got a backwards compatibility on the Xbox consoles just recently, I did an article on SEGAbits because it was brought to my attention, I think, by Kiyoshi Okuma, who's been on our show a few times, from Strike Armor Project. He keeps changing the name, but I think that's what it's called now. That he's like, oh, I bet accessibility options would make this playable. And I thought, oh, you're right. So when you log into your Xbox, you go into the accessibility, and you basically just remap L3 to, I think, like the A or the B or the X or the Y button. One of those, because they don't. One of the letter buttons does the same function as another one, so you can just remap it, and it's so much easier. Like, imagine moving around with the character and then just pushing this button.
Yeah,
it's so much easier. Or you can even move it to a trigger. It's just amazing. Like, it changes the game. It doesn't make it easier, but it makes you able to play the game like a lot longer without having any fatigue to your thumbs. So if that was the reason why you stopped playing this game in the past, revisit it for sure on the modern Xbox. It's a game changer.
Yeah, I would say give it. That's one of the things I really love about the Xbox. I mean, people could say whatever they want, like, oh, there's no exclusive games, but like, at least they're trying to make a console where you could just buy everything. Like, you could. I'll talk about this in the end when we talk about the legacy, but that's the best part I think about it. It's that, like, you could just buy the Series X and get all these old games running at way better than they ever ran or looked.
I bought the Xbox One X, and I never bought a game with it. I think the first Xbox One game I bought was like 8 months later. But when I logged in, I had 40 games playable just from my library, and I was like, holy crap, I can play everything. It's amazing. So... yeah. So
one of the things you also brought up on your looking back is that Jet Set Radio had a more thought out progression. Like, there were smaller maps that connected to this massive map, and then they connected it together, and it's like this big final epic, ending to it. Gunvalkyrie takes a more simple approach, unlocking stages and missions. Most missions are pretty simple in theory. With you just it's like get to one point, destroying all enemies, collecting an object. The game also has an upgrade ability, allowing you to buy weapons and gear skin upgrades, which all this is very important since you have to... there's some people that I'm sure could probably beat the game with no upgrades. You guys are crazy. The game has 25 stages, and also one of the important things is finding the Haley core, because if you find it, there's like a suit in the game that it like gives you more power-ups and stuff. It's like, to beat the game. And the game is pretty short, I would say, outside of the difficulty and you replaying it over and over again. It's about 6 hours, which I would say is a pretty decent arcade-type shooting time. It's like, I think Vanquish is about the same time, 6 to 7 hours. So I would say it's about there. And this one doesn't have that many cutscenes compared to, like, Vanquish. Not that they both had that many cutscenes, but... So, yeah. While the game is overall more basic in terms of design compared to other Smilebit games... what aspect of the game would you have liked to see them expand on if they were ever to get more development time on this game?
I think the jet, the like boost sort of flying mode was really cool, and I think they could have expanded on that. I think I'm reminded of Jet Set Radio Future with the boost that the skates would give you, and you'd go like, and you just rocket through the level. I thought with this game it was kind of an interesting evolution on that Jet Set Radio concept, where instead you were boosting like upwards and to the side, and I think they really could have made this more of an aerial kind of flight game with a little bit of like a parkour sort of gameplay aspect to it if they spent more time with it. I think too it's probably the closest you're going to get to Burning Rangers gameplay in another Sega game, and so if you're a fan of Burning Rangers, definitely check this game out. It's obviously cheaper and easier to find, but it feels like an expansion on that sort of gameplay concept. It's just not perfected yet, but that's the one big thing. And I too would have liked that map progression. I think what I really love about Jet Set Radio is you get to know the stages really well because you play them. Like you play a little bit of each stage, and then the final stage is a big epic revisit.
Yeah.
And you get to learn how they all interconnect. And you really become like a master of the stages because you're like, oh, if you go down the sewer and you go up here, you can actually get into the warehouse. I think it would have been cool here to maybe have stages that are a little more recognizable with set pieces. I think the stages are a little too samey.
That's the problem.
I think it would have been cool to have like... Yeah, it would have been cool to have like, oh, this is the area with the giant temple. And then down here, there's like some water. Like just little things to make you understand where you are. But to be quite honest, like I get lost very easily without that map, just because the stages, they're not boring aesthetically, but they're samey. They're just samey.
That's an issue. I also would like different types of bad guys. Maybe like the problem is that this is such an early game that like there's so many modern ideas that they kind of like interconnect to these games. I don't know if you've ever seen this like PS5 game that came out called Returnal. But it's like basically one of those like rogue games where you die, you get upgrades, you come back, and you keep on doing it. But like the shooting and stuff kind of reminded me of this, where it's like all these like monsters, but like you just keep on upgrading. It's like bullet hell kind of. Just the way that the characters sometimes look with the armor kind of reminded me of it recently when I was doing the notes on this. I was playing it and I was like, yeah, this kind of like a roguelike, you know, the game's also called Gunvalkyrie, you know, Valkyries die and they come back or whatever, or they die and they come back when you die or whatever. Also, another weird thing,
right.
Valkyrie is like a Norse mythology thing, and this game has I'm surprised it had nothing to do with Norse mythology at all when I was doing the notes.
It has killer whales. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the music. We usually don't talk about the music, but this game is kind of weird that I kind of had to bring it up. So while most games don't get USA track releases, like most games that release in Japan like these don't get, you know, soundtracks in America. This game only got a soundtrack in America, and it was like a licensing thing they did with Tokyo Pop back in 2002. Mm-hmm. So they released the CD. It's actually not that rare, so if you guys want to pick it up, it's probably a time to try to pick it up used. I think I saw it for $5, $20 new.
Wow.
So it's definitely worth checking out. It has 24 tracks, just under an hour of music. The soundtrack was composed by two Sega composers, Tarohiko Nakagawa, who did Panzer Dragoon Zwei and 100 Swords, and Tasayuki Maeda, who did Dragon Force, Skies of Arcadia, Daytona USA 2001, and Sonic Advance. You probably heard of them. From what I read, a lot of reviews and seen a lot of online talk about this game, the music for the game was mostly passable from fans, but not a huge amount of people. Like I haven't heard that many people talking about the soundtrack compared to like other soundtracks at the time. Even like the Shinobi 2001 soundtrack, I think got more people talking about it on forums than this when I was doing research, which is something you usually don't hear from Sega games, especially SmileBit, when like some games of SmileBit's soundtracks are so overpowering that it's almost like they talk about the soundtrack more than the game. Like Jet Set Radio is a great example where the music is talked about just the same as the cel-shaded graphics in the gameplay. Like it's right there, right?
Right.
What is your opinion on the Gunvalkyrie soundtrack?
It's not that memorable, especially coming from SmileBit. You're kind of coming in thinking, oh my god, we're gonna have a banging soundtrack, but it's just kind of like the
trailer.
You know,
that trailer we watched with the music.
Nothing sticks out to me. I want to pick up the soundtrack just so I can kind of listen to it isolated. Just because I want to like this soundtrack, especially with the people who worked on it. I love their other games, but yeah, this is just there isn't like a Gunvalkyrie theme that stands out to me or anything like that, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It feels like that's something they should have, like, it could have been in any game. Almost felt like it could have been like a B-side on a Sonic Adventure track or something, you know? Like, oh, this is the menu music for Chow's. It's like, oh, okay, cool.
Right.
Yeah, so advertising. When we did a Swingy Report Show interview with Greg Johnson, creator of Toe Jam and Earl, I don't know if you guys heard of those games, pretty sick. He talked about how Microsoft used to give them advertisement budgets for their games for Xbox. Remember, he's talked about it. I think he said it was like $1 million or something like that they gave him to Sega for his game.
Yeah.
Seems that Gunvalkyrie at this time was no different, since this game actually got magazine ads. It actually had quite a few magazine ads. So the first one we're going to look at is the American one, and I think this is the one you know. You've probably seen in it, and it has the same type of humor that the Toe Jam and Earl 3 one had. Remember that? It was also talking about the boobs. This one says, "Believe it or not, her best feature is her trigger finger," and it has her, milkers sticking out like that. I mean, hey, I respect this woman. I think she's the best player in this game, but she was definitely the advertisement tool. This is something that Xbox did. Remember Greg Johnson said that they did the same thing with the female they added to Toe Jam and Earl, and he didn't like it. Yeah. He didn't like that it was like trying to be sexy. And this one has the same exact joke.
They did that too with Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball, where they're like, she kicks high, guys getting boners on a couch. It was totally like dude bro college frat humor.
Yeah.
Like, all right, dude, I know I'm playing an anime game, but she's got jugs, so it's cool. I'm not a nerd. I'm just horny.
Yeah. It was like it was really, that's how they marketed games. If people are watching this and they didn't grow up in the early 2000s, that's how they marketed games to us.
The amount of people who would be canceled for the shit they write about people they see at like gaming conventions. Like, remember, they'd be like, we just got back from E3, look at these babes, wouldn't mind getting with some of them. And I'm like, and I'm not trying to like paint this as like, man, those were the good old days, but like even then I was like,
what?
How are you allowed to like have a job and write about this? Like, yeah, they're like trade show girls, but you can't just like post their pictures and then make like nasty comments about what you want to do to them. Like,
I think I posted one of I was doing a research on a guy that did I wanted to interview him, I think, and I was like, I'm gonna look up at his old articles, and I think I was the one I was posting when he was like doing old Mortal Kombat like 1999 Dreamcasts where the girls were cosplaying for the company, and he was like, taking pictures of them, very creepy. I was like, I'm not interviewing this guy. This is too much. Like, I don't want to talk to someone like that. But this humor, it was just prevailing in the early 2000s. I don't know if it worked. I think it probably did work in a way because, like, I mean, they did the Guy game and that BMX XXX. Remember, they tried to sell it that there was...
Oh, the Guy game's awesome.
I've never played it, is it?
That's the one with the guy in the front going...
I just seen the cover and I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm a guy, I better buy this. So yeah, this is that kind of art thing. Outside of the little thing about her, her having better features than just her trigger finger, it's a decent ad. She is obviously the center.
It's a cool render.
Very cool render. The art in this game is not that bad.
I have not seen that render used anywhere else. Like I don't think. It must be unique to the ad.
Yeah. Well, here's a Japanese one, which is more conservative. It's just her. I mean, she's obviously outside of the suit, so it's like almost lingerie type. But outside of that, there's no like thing saying in Japanese. Oh, I don't know. I can't read Japanese. That might say the same thing, but in Japanese, like.
You keep doing the show. I'll get my Google Translation.
Okay, good. We got to figure out. Does it do like just scanning like that?
Yeah, it just scans it. Oh, it says, "Look at her boobs."
Oh, damn. I don't think they did that in Japan. Do you think so? Like, I can't read Japanese, and I never seen like translated articles. But like, I doubt they went to Tokyo Game Show. And were like, booby sections.
This is completely off topic. I recently watched a YouTube video. It was Japanese guys trying to talk like Americans.
Oh yeah.
It's hilarious. It's like these 8 guys sitting on stage, and they go, "What's your name? What's your name? Talk loud."
That's how we talk, dude. I mean, it is what it is, but
it is.
We're authoritarians. We like talking loud.
Let's see if I can do this.
Do Japanese people talk
here we
low?
Go.
I've never...
They do. They talk very quietly. Now the goddess of dreams. Soy sauce?
Ooh, boy.
Wait. Now the goddess of drinking soy sauce.
Oh, this is it. That's exactly...
I think.
I can't wait for you to go to Japan and use that to try to translate the bathroom.
Now the god of decoration. Now the goddess of decoration. I'm trying to get that wording because it's behind the comment, so it's kind of hard. To be now the god of soap. Maybe I'm wrong there.
Maybe she's dirty.
But it's something about her being a goddess.
She's definitely...
Yeah.
You know, the thing is, like, if you've seen this ad and the other American ad, you think, yeah, this game is just this one character, this blonde girl. Like, the guy, literally, the Japanese character is not even in the Japanese ad. Like, that's how bad.
I don't remember playing as the guy. I don't think I've ever played as the guy.
I played it just to try it, but yeah.
I played as him to try it, but I've never actually been like, let's sit down and play.
Oh, no, me neither. The character design is just so generic. Like I said, her character design is, like, the best. Like, I like her armor, the white armor that she has.
They call her a goddess, pretty much.
She's not a goddess in the game, but, pretty close. She's a superhero. How about this German ad? What do you think about this? This, like, makes no sense. What do you think about this? What is this? Like, who is that character?
It's like a little bald boy being eaten by bugs. It reminds me of that scene in The Mummy. Remember the like Brendan Fraser mummy movie with that guy, and the torch is slowly going out and all the bugs are surrounding him, and then when the torch goes out, he's like, that's what's going to happen to this kid.
This is Infogrames did the publishing in Europe, I think. So they did this ad for it. I think it's the worst ad, but because it doesn't even look like the game. Like, that character looks like one of the most generic Western games. You know what I mean? Like, when you see, like, remember we were talking about Binary Domain, how the lead character is a little generic? That's what he looks like. Or the guy from Alpha Protocol.
Yeah, it definitely was made, like, for the ad, not from, like, the team. They were like, create a new character who's a little boy. What a stupid ad. This is probably one of the worst ads I've seen on here in a long time.
Yeah, this is terrible. And the screenshot's super small, so you can't see it. So you don't know what the game's really about.
I'm translating.
360 Annihilation.
Here we go. What is it? All right. Here, you keep doing your thing.
And the next thing is, it also had a demo disc on Xbox, the original Xbox. It came out on it had the cover of the UK and USA official Xbox magazines, including Xbox Nation, and then it had a May 2002 demo disc where it was the featured demo. So it did have a lot of, like, advertisement, I guess, and people did play it before it came out. What does it say?
That's pretty cool. So it says, turn around and fight gets a new meaning.
Oh, that makes sense, because the tagline's 360 Annihilation.
Right, yeah. So in Germany, and I think in some European countries, they added the tagline 360-degree annihilation, which I think the idea was you're being attacked by on all sides by the spiders. Yeah, so you're, like, by the bugs, so you're turning constantly. Like, it makes sense, but, like,
that's not the...
To me, if you said, hey, what's the selling point of Gunvalkyrie, I wouldn't say, there's bugs on all sides. You know? Like,
or playing, like, Jet Set Radio and it's, like, cops everywhere. It's like, well, that's, like, a small feature of the game. Or it could say, like, Hideki Nakanuma is a cat boy.
Shitposting.
Yeah, he's shit boy. He's a cat boy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's talk about the legacy of the game. I guess this is more controversial because it's more like the lack of legacy. Well, the game has flown under the radar, which is something that, in my opinion, happened a lot in the early Xbox exclusive games. For example, I already told you in the beginning, I didn't even know Dino Crisis 3 was a thing. This game actually got decent reviews. They got a 73 Metacritic score, which I would say it's about right. It's maybe 60. I would say even 68 would have been pretty all right for it. I mean, there's a lot of issues it had, and it was more simple compared to the past games, but it's not a terrible game. It's one of those games where it's like kind of like Secret of the Ring, where people are like, it's the worst game ever, and it's like, no, it's not the worst game. It has issues for sure, but it's definitely playable in my opinion. But I will say one of the biggest haters came from GameStop. In 2002, they did a 2000 most disappointing game, and they had we had one of these, didn't we? A most disappointing game.
Yeah.
So they gave it to Valkyrie. I mean, they listed 5, I think. I'm gonna try to put it up if I can.
Oh, I see them. Yeah, Blinks, Bruce Lee, Quest of the Dragon, Gunvalkyrie, and Steel Battalion. Those are all decent games. At least Blinks and Steel Battalion.
People hated them back then. But I would say that the game they got, the worst game, I think, in the end was Toe Jam 3. Were you disappointed with Toe Jam 3? Like, I didn't really want the game when it came out. It was like out of nowhere.
I didn't. I mean, I was never a huge fan of the original Toe Jam and Earl, but I like the concept of bringing the concept to 3D without it being like a platformer. But I think the latest Toe Jam and Earl does a much better job back in the groove at doing that. Still, I wouldn't hate on the game, it's. I mean, it's the thing is the game sets out to be what it is. So what's the problem? You know, like you're like, oh man, this Toe Jam and Earl game plays like Toe Jam and Earl. Like, what'd you expect?
I don't know what they expected. I mean, it was such a weird game that I don't think anyone expected it to be like anything. It was so weird. It would just like came out. It was like one of those weird ones. But according to them, like you said before, the runner-ups included Blinks, Bruce Lee, Quest of the Dragon, Gunvalkyrie, and Steel Battalion. Obviously, you played Gunvalkyrie. Which of these games have you played, like, out of these that are supposed to be bad? Obviously, Toe Jam 3, Earl 3, and Gunvalkyrie are given.
I mean, out of all of these, I'd say the best game's probably Gunvalkyrie. I think Steel Battalion's kind of locked behind that expensive controller. Yeah. I think Blinks the Time Sweeper was a good concept, but it was not a very good game. I think it's actually kind of broken. I remember it gives you like a certain set amount of items to like manipulate time, and if you screw up, you're kind of stuck in a stage.
That's the worst.
But I Blinks gets a lot of flack. Like people are like, oh, he's not that great of a mascot, but it's like he never really was the Xbox mascot. It's just
they kind of wanted him to be, but it didn't happen, and I don't think Microsoft was pushing it either. It was like. It's like every single time there was a console, there was like a opening to have a mascot game, like Crash. Like Crash technically wasn't a PlayStation mascot.
Right, it pretty much was whoever was the first platformer to appear on a console would become the mascot. You know, like I think PlayStation 3 had one.
Sackboy?
You know, like it's not an actual... Yeah, like Sackboy. But... I mean, was he the mascot for PlayStation?
No. I think we all could agree it's like Master Chief because like that's the most popular thing, you know. Bruce Lee,
absolutely.
I was so excited for this game because you know Bruce Lee's sick, you know, and he knows karate or kung fu, and so, not a good game. I would say that's probably the worst because like all you had to do is make a beat 'em up game. Really, that's it. But all right. So what did you think of Xbox? Oh, wait up. Oh, okay. So. Their best 5 games at GameStop back then was, according to them, Jet Set Radio Future, Mech Assault, NFL 2K3, another Sega game, Rally Sports Challenge, Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell. So, out of these games, which one have you played and which one do you like? I've played Splinter Cell, good. 2K3, it's a sports game, you know. Jet Set Radio Future is definitely the best one. No.
I mean, I would say, obviously, Jet Set Radio Future for me is the best one, but I would say Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell is probably the most, out of all of these, the one that made the biggest impact because it continued on to become a pretty big franchise. And I think we just did our last episode of last year was talking about Alpha Protocol, and Splinter Cell was a game that I don't know if they drew inspiration from or if it came out shortly thereafter, but they just recently announced a Splinter Cell revival. So, I mean, out of all of these, if you were to say which one was like the most successful, Splinter Cell by far, because I'm not seeing a new Jet Set Radio anytime soon.
And NFL 2K is one of those licensing things, but if it was still around, I'm assuming we'd be saying NFL 2K is still the most popular.
What is, though, there's a really good... it's an NCAA one, though, right? That came out around that time. No, wait, what am I thinking of? There's a 2K game that came out around that time that has constantly been pushed as, like, the best of all of them. And it has, like, your own, like, a room you can hang out in and decorate, and, like, celebrities' phone calls.
You're thinking about NBA 2K, I think, the new ones?
No, this one was on Xbox and PlayStation.
NFL Fever?
It was like... No.
Are you sure it wasn't the exclusive? Because Xbox had their own exclusive sports game. It was like an era.
It was a Sega... No, it was a Sega college sports, either football or basketball game.
I haven't played it, so...
It's got like super. Like I would constantly read like it was like even if you're not into sports games, this is one to check out because it was like Visual Concepts like last really great game with Sega. So anyway, that's another Sega, I guess.
As far as legacy of Gunvalkyrie, the franchise is pretty much dead. Definitely probably not coming back. Much like other Xbox exclusives from this era, companies just haven't re-released it in like new packaging or on other consoles. Most likely because of the very strict Xbox exclusive causes or, whatever mumbo jumbo they put in contracts. But thanks to Xbox backwards compatibility updates during the 20th anniversary celebration last year, they updated the Xbox One and Xbox Series consoles with the ability to play the game in 4K. If your console does 4K. You can also buy the game digitally on the Xbox Microsoft Store for only $10, which is a huge, like, it's nice because sometimes these games are like randomly, like Outrun 2 goes to like $100, and it's like, oh, it'd be nice to just buy it digitally for $10 and get over with and like move on with my life. Considering how much old games, that's what I basically hear. But that's it though. That's our notes for Gunvalkyrie, a game that was underrated. Not a lot of people played. It's not perfect. I would say it's kind of it's not a terrible game. I would say it's just a middle of the road for SmileBit. It has charm. Stylistically has charm. It has a cool backstory, cool sci-fi idea with alternative history. Those are the strong points of this game. The bad stuff, like you said, the controls and the difficulty spikes. The game's a little basic in terms of characterization. And I think that's about what we came up with, right? During this whole episode, right?
Yeah, it's I mean, not every game that we cover on this show is going to be great, and sometimes we cover some games that are just terrible and fun to talk about, but sometimes there's just like those middle of the road games where it's like they never really caught on as a franchise. They didn't sell too well, but they're not terrible. And I think what's really great about this game is how accessible it is now. You can go out and play it right now for $10. So if you like Jet Set Radio, if you like Burning Rangers, if you like forgotten Sega titles, definitely pick this one up. I think, what have you got to lose? $10, I guess.
Oh, that's true.
So, yeah. So if you support us on Patreon at any level, you can leave a comment talking about the show. I'm stretching it out so I can find the comment. But this one was, we do have one from, and I'm building it up, and it's gonna fall with a thud. Arthur Brown, he says, I can't say that I've played this game before, but looking at it, I really wish that I had. What stood out to me was how nice the graphics are, the characters are detailed, and the overall aesthetic is very pleasing. Well, yeah, you look at a little tushy on the cover. My words, not his. I have to admit that the game Gunvalkyrie sounds very funny and over the top, like if they call the game Bullet Goddess. However, it does fit the title really well. I should definitely make it a goal to play this at some point. Well, hey, if you have an Xbox, $10, dude, check it out. All right, so next time, which I think, is it next week? Oh, I guess it is because this show's a week late. We are going to be getting spooky in January. It's going to be Illbleed, the bizarre horror thing game. Very weird. So I'm looking forward to, so if you like rare games that you can't play anymore, Illbleed.
That's it for this episode of Sega Talk. We'll catch you guys next week. We'll Illbleed a Dreamcast game and blah blah blah. Goodbye.
We'll be ill and bloody. Bye.
All right.